What you wanna be? Step 4. Everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a
Welcome to Tales from the Field. My name is Bradley Ball, and it is so good to have you with us. Last week, we had our Elfster show, a little Christmas in February, and a little bit of needed happiness. Lonnie Bauer, Global Domain Lead, Andrew Nathan, Principal Engineering Manager of Azure Core, and Daniel Taylor, Senior Engineer, all from Azure Fast Track, joined us on the show. 2 weeks ago, Andreas hosted and Josh won. Josh will be our host today. Wednesday, we dropped our MS Tech Bits, Azure Snaps Analytics in a Box Pattern 1 featuring Andreas and Neeraj. You want to make sure that you check that out. How to be able to deploy your analytics environment utilizing Bicep. Absolutely amazing stuff. And then Thursday, we had our roundtable with amazing content featured and created by you, the community. You don't want to miss a minute of those shows. If this is your first time finding your way over to us at Tales from in the Field, make sure that you give us a like, give us a subscribe, so that way you can see all of our content. And if you want to interact with the show, it is so easy. We are streaming on LinkedIn under Sequel Balls, on YouTube under Tales from the Field. Josh.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, we lost.
I was worried this was going to happen, but yeah. So as Brad was saying, we're streaming on the Twitter accounts at Tales from the Field, Sequel Balls, Neeraj Jafari, mine, Josh Ludeman, over on LinkedIn under Brad's LinkedIn account. So head over to Twitter, head over to the YouTube channel, tweet, on Twitter, comment on the stream, anything like that. And of course, before we go any further, let's introduce those co-hosts. We have Bradley Ball, Andres Padilla, myself, and spring is in the air. There's a spring in my step because we are treated to one of the world's greatest human beings. It's your friend, mine, possibly Brad's, Neeraj Jafari. So this week, I'm the host. And so what I want to do for the host this week is building a brand and growing your career. And as if it couldn't get any better than that, Vicky Harp is here with us today. Vicky's a principal group product manager in the Windows Developer Experiences team. She's a writer, blogger, international conference presenter. Vicky's been on the leadership team for operational databases at Microsoft. She has had a role in building some of the products that we all know and love. And she was in the role as a principal group product manager for database experiences, working on everything from the SDKs to the Azure portal, Azure Data Studio, SSMS. Vicky, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So with that, we have Brad back. Brad, welcome back.
Thanks.
I'll toss it over to you to see how your weekend was and hear how Andres' was and everybody else.
No, thanks so much. Sorry about that. Apparently, I am starting to figure it out, but it's an issue with the underlying Explorer and Windows module because everything on my machine just freezes up. So, yeah, weekend was good for me. Andreas, how was it for you?
Oh, great, man. The weather down here in South Florida is prime time. Spent the day on Saturday at the beach. I couldn't ask for anything more. Sunday, relaxing. Like, Josh says, we're very simple human beings. A cocktail by the pool, you can't go wrong with.
You're not wrong there. It's good and beautiful stuff. So, Josh, did you already introduce everybody?
Introduced everybody, and I was actually going to go into the rules. Since I'm the host, I'll go over the rules. So, Vicky, this is where you and I come in. We're going to listen to what everybody has to say about building a professional brand, and we're going to issue them points based off of their thoughts. And at the end of the show, the person with the most points wins host duties for next week's episode. So,
all right, sounds good. Competitive.
Oh, absolutely. So, really, Brad, did you want to kind of talk through building a professional brand?
So building a professional brand can seem somewhat esoteric. We hear it all the time, of course. This gets to be a bit of a buzzword. Oh, you should build a brand. But Vicky, you have actually built an amazing brand for yourself, and you've been involved in the community. You've been an author, a presenter. When you speak to people or you mentor people that you know, either professionally or from the Azure Data community, What advice do you give them when it comes to building that brand?
Well, so I think for one thing I always want to say, when people talk about brands, there's a sense that maybe we're talking about being inauthentic. And I think that it's exactly the opposite is true. You need to be rooting it in authenticity, because if you're trying to build a brand around kind of an ideal or some concept that you think is not you, then really there's no way that wins. It's going to be hard to maintain. And even if you do maintain it, what you're doing is essentially saying that this other person that is not me is the face that I want to put out there. It's so much more natural to find the place where your natural self fits and to align yourself into that community, and so it's kind of a combination. So you're building a brand in the place that you find to be home, and so you kind of find your chosen community. And once you're there, being your authentic self and having kind of the courage to put yourself out there as you really are, I think is really the root of it. It doesn't have to come down to, you have fancy little tricks or, etc. That said, I do think that there's some like practical little bits, everybody, it's, I think, hand wavy to say, oh, just go be yourself, because being yourself, in different contexts can mean different things. And one of the things that I've actually covered in like leadership training and whatnot is kind of the understanding that everybody's, contexts are different, and getting familiar with the norms where you're going to be building your brand is really important. A good example that was given to me was having to do with like meeting cultures in a company. If you think about it, at Microsoft, if you have a team that's getting together and they're brainstorming and they're writing things on the whiteboard and everybody's talking over each other, etc., and then you get up and you walk down the hall and you sit down with a VP, suddenly no one's doing that. The norm is now that you kind of take turns and you wait until you're called upon, etc. But who set those norms, and are you following them? And so one of the things to do is to get yourself familiar with that. And if you're not somebody who's naturally able to identify those things, one of the key things you can do is find yourself a colleague, a friend, somebody else in the community to give you that feedback. And so that's one of my key things, is to kind of find that person who can give you that feedback of when you are off the norms, when you're on the norms, and help you align on that.
Because often people will talk about building a brand, but again, where it can be nebulous and exoteric is they have an idea of what they mean, but they can mean multiple different things. There's building a brand when you're outside of Microsoft and the Azure data community, and maybe you want to become an MVP, or you're looking at how can I contribute to that community. And then when you get inside of Microsoft, I remember having conversations with managers where they're like, you should really build a brand. And I'm like, I had one before I got here. Does that one not count anymore? And it was about understanding that concept of, oh, there's an internal brand to Microsoft, an internal brand within the company, different events that we have internally, and it's participating in those and contributing to those. So that way you get recognition within, and it's important to have both of those. And so, especially depending on your career level, part of what we're doing here with the show is we're helping to try and build that external brand that we have outside of the internal brand of just Microsoft.
Absolutely. And I think, knowing that context and knowing what you're trying to get at is helpful, but also kind of be willing to let yourself go with the flow of it. I wouldn't say that there was some moment, in my career where I was like, you know what, this is exactly where I want to be at this future time. It's more like this is the career I want to have. I want to be doing commercial software. I want to be rooting it in my history and data, and I want to be rooting it in working with users. So for more than half of my career, I was a software developer, and then I switched over to product management. And I wouldn't say it affected my brand in a major way, because it was still the same community. It was still the same, engaging with users in the same way. But I know other people who, if they had kind of rooted their entire, persona around talking about code specifically, talking about what they were doing in their daily job specifically, then making a change like that would have been something that they'd have to consider more carefully. So that's one of the things that, looking back, I think I accidentally did right by kind of keeping what I was doing for my job as an important part of what I talk about, but not necessarily the only thing about me. And that I think goes also back to what I was saying about authenticity, and maybe a little bit of carefully considering how much of yourself you want to put in there versus how much you want it to be about, work, or if we're not talking about branding, then, is it some other, other community that you're working on that's not about work? How much do you want to bring your own personal life into it, which kind of creates that consistency as you move through your career?
Absolutely. So when you have different people that you talk to that are at different levels of their career, are there different things that you would recommend for someone who's just starting out in their career, that maybe just starting out from college, versus someone who may be, at a mid-level of their career, or someone who's a senior in their career?
Yeah, so especially for more junior people, I encourage them to get exposure to a lot of different types of, you know, uh, I want them to be observing different ways of approaching this and what are the different models that they can use, and identify which ones are really appealing to them for which reasons, and let's talk it over. So do you like the fact that this person does a lot of public speaking? Are you interested in doing public speaking? Are you attracted by this person's knowledge and the fact that they are somebody that people go to in the community, and that seems to be someone that is a sage in the community? Is this somebody who's fun? Is this somebody who's creates a lot of energy? What are the things that are kind of attracting you to that? And then how are you looking for those things because you want to be that, or because it's very different from you and so you draw energy from it? So make a difference between what's your goal and who are you kind of a fan of, because I can certainly think, oh, this person is great and I love following them, etc., and I could never do that, and that's why I love watching them and watching them do it. And so don't get yourself confused about that you want to necessarily be the thing that you observe, and so kind of separate those things out. And then I think that getting that wider exposure keeps you from necessarily falling into a rut where you're kind of following without bringing anything distinct. So when you have kind of a broader view, then, for example, if I'm talking about people within Microsoft early in career, I'm like, you should definitely be talking to somebody outside of your own org on a regular basis, because you can wind up getting into this thing where you think that you're acting in a Microsoft way, but actually you're acting in a way that's very distinct for your small space. And if you were to move over even a small org change over, you would be starting all over from scratch. And that goes to what I would recommend for people who are mid-career and up, is to actually try to find those people in their network who are the super connectors. So who are the people that who know everybody? And you can try to become one of those people, but before you can do that, you need to know those people and know who is the person who knows everybody. And if I ask, hey, do you know anybody working on gaming? Hey, do you know anybody working on healthcare? That they're the person who's probably going to say, oh yeah, you should talk to so-and-so, and get to know those people, identify those people, and check in with them regularly so that you can get those connections. It all goes back again to networking in a sense, but it has to do with that, getting the input from a lot of different places, and being able to, I guess, assess the situation. And it helps you also question the norms that you're maybe in your home area. So some of the things that maybe feel super important to you, whenever you get a broader view of it, you realize it's actually super important to your leadership, but is it super important to the users? Is it super important to the company? Is it super important to the community? And until you have that kind of broader feedback, it can turn out that you're not actually leading yourself, you're being led by others, and it's hard to kind of own your own message if it's not your message.
Well, I love the introspection that you put into this, right? Because sometimes, and you said this, right? We get lucky at doing things in a particular way. Mm-hmm. I found the Azure data community and the SQL community really, because I was often at places with many other DBAs. We needed to learn, we needed to get knowledge on the latest and greatest things so we'd be ready to go. And I found this place because of 24 hours for pass. Here are these great videos with these amazing people giving this content away for free. I can go get a conference room and say, I'm going to book it throughout this day, and here's the different sessions, and I can send it around. And if there's a project that has something where this technology might actually impact this project, well, hey, everybody come and let's watch this video and let's see if this is something that we should know more about or we should follow. And that slowly got me to one day, one of the guys I was working with went, oh, well, if you love 24 hours to pass, you must love SQL Saturdays. And I went, what's a SQL Saturday? And they were like, well, this Saturday in Orlando, one's happening. And I went to my first SQL Saturday. That then exposed me to conferences and everything in a much larger. So there's that accidental luck portion of it sometimes that leads you into it. But there's also that dedicated intent of going, what do I like about this?
Mm.
What actually can I derive and I go, this is what I would like to do? Finding where, separating out what my purpose is versus what another person's may be. And it's okay for me to admire them for this thing that I can't do. But how do I find the thing that speaks to me that I want to be passionate about?
Yeah, you need to, this isn't just about brand building. This is something that I tell everybody at pretty much every level. You need to know what fills your cup and what empties your cup. And you need to have a good balance of that. And so if you wind up setting yourself up so that you want to be a member of your community and you want to be a leader and you communicate, and everything that you've chosen to do is something that empties your cup, you're not going to be able to hold it together. You're going to get burnt out by it, or you're going to not succeed at it in the same way as if the things that you're building your brand around are the things that fill your cup and that you could keep doing and that actually give you the energy to go and do the things that are harder. And it doesn't mean that you don't get a little bit of both, but certainly if getting hard feedback from users was something that really drained me, I wouldn't be able to be a PM, right? Whenever I can instead view it as, that's really interesting. I really need to think about that. And I love this insight that you're bringing me, and I love the honesty and, having that sense of, I feel honored by your trusting me with this information. That makes it possible for me to carry on with users in that way. Whereas if I was somebody who felt threatened by that, and maybe I feel like I shouldn't, but I do feel threatened by that, but I feel a lot of, it fills my cup to be able to help somebody out technically and help, it may be to give them information and to be kind of giving out, then that's what I should be basing it around, even if maybe I would admire somebody who is more of an inward, accepting type voice. I would say that in our community, mostly we do have people who are more broadcast mode and less of the kind of input mode. And I consider myself more of the input mode person. And so I'd say it takes all, there's room for all kinds in there. So if you're kind of looking around the community and you say, yes, what they do is amazing, but it sounds like it would, it would totally drain me. Well, think about what it is that you do that doesn't drain you, and imagine that probably drains somebody else. And if you're not seeing it somewhere else, then it could be that you're the one who can bring a special spin to it.
Interesting.
Masterclass.
So Josh, you're on mute. That's all right. I'm crashing constantly. Josh is always on mute.
Well, so here's the thing. I leave myself on mute and start talking 1 episode per month. And you know what? I'm early for March. That's all I have to say. Now, I was going to say, Andres, I was going to toss it to you and get your thoughts on building a professional brand.
Man, Vicky, first of all, masterclass on brand building. You hit so many things that are just, light bulbs in my head. So for me, what I would recommend, first and foremost, for brand management, okay, I got it out there. I'm starting out. What do I need to do? Start out small. Keep your tasks small. And if you don't know where to start, go ahead, pull up that eHow video or tutorial and go look it up. Concentrate on what you like to do and try to hone in on what the business needs and what your managers needs, and see if you can corner a market. Where is there a lack of coverage? Where are people not, doing things? But also remember, there's a balance there, because you want to do what you like. Always be yourself. People love you and what you bring, and everybody brings a different ingredient to the mix that you can't do. So be yourself. To keep it simple, maybe you can start by reposting articles. Build up your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter profile. A good website, a good personal brand website that showcases, hey, what have I done? What do I like? A blog, blogging. So those are all keeping it simple. And then emulate, copy, fake it until you make it. Maybe that works for a lot of people. And emulating people that are in your arena, in your circle, and you want to grow to probably get to their level. And then last but not least, throwing yourself into the deep end is always a great way to get started. What do I mean by that? If you're scared, one of the best things you can do is public speaking and joining some of these conferences. And public speaking is hard. It's not easy, but once you get going, once you get, you rip off that Band-Aid and you jump into it, you'll get the rhythm. You'll see that you'll meet the bar, you'll meet the mark. You won't fail because you're under, the pressure of like, I have to meet I have to deliver on this conference. So you won't fail. You'll be under the pressure to meet it, and you will meet it. And then last but not least, if things change, don't worry about it. Changing is actually, if you go from shake and bake to Magic Man, in one moment, you can. Changing your brand once you have sort of an established brand and tweaking it, it actually becomes easier. Those are my that's my how video on how to build your brand.
No, yeah, I love the starting small thing because, everybody starts small, and one of the things you can do is just ask the people who are around you, who you admire, how did they start, and what was their small thing. And if you're afraid of failures, ask them what their failure was. I've got plenty. I'd say anybody who's successful has probably a longer list of failures than anybody else. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. You probably won't fail, but even if you count it as a failure, it's very likely no one else does. So
I had a question. Why public speaking, Andreas? Why would you go public speaking? If somebody gets trained on public speaking,
it's one avenue, it's one channel. But one thing that public speaking does for you is you're now in front of people and you have to deliver. So what does that force you to do? It forces you to learn the material inside and out. And when you learn the material, then you can speak it. And that being put into that situation will force you to learn the material.
One of the things I would say is that when you public speak, I liken it to roller skating or ice skating. You're using a set of muscles that you aren't used to. If you've never ice skated before, you go and ice skate, your ankles are going to be sore in places that you didn't know that your ankles could be sore because it's a different set of muscles. Public speaking is the same kind of way. But when you really get into public speaking, there are different levels of it because you really have to know and understand your audience. If I'm going to go present to a user group on a technical topic, that's going to be a different presentation than if I have 5 minutes to be able to talk in one of our all hands meetings. If I'm going to, then end up talking to a CIO about a particular issue, the level of business clarity that I'm going to need to have and the granularity and the lack of, honestly, just technical detail, it needs to be a technical summary. That audience is completely different. And so again, this forces you to exercise those different muscles, but also, and there's a lot of truth to what you were saying, Andreas. When I first started speaking in the community, I got very lucky. It wasn't because it was the topic I chose, but it was the one that was selected for me by a SQL Saturday organizer. I started speaking on compression, page and row compression in SQL Server, brand new, had come out. Not a lot of people were using it. And I got tasked with that presentation. Well, I was the only one out there talking about it. And so when I continued to talk on it, I had people constantly ask me questions. And I used to have a little pad of paper with me and I would go, I'm not a smart man, or at least that's what my wife tells me. But I promise if you ask a question and I don't know an answer, I'm going to write it down and that will become a blog. I will get you an answer. I will have an answer for you. And 8 months into doing that presentation, I did a deep dive on it because I had been asked so many questions. I still did that bit, but I wasn't getting questions I didn't know the answer to anymore because that forced you to learn that topic. You don't understand the different nuances of how people actually use something until you start to get into it. So there are so many different avenues, but again, you don't have to. I know a ton of completely competent and amazing technical people who are not speakers.
Well, I think that people don't give themselves credit for what their speaking experience is either. So one of my early career things was technical support. And if you don't think that that's speaking, it is all about speaking. It is you're commanding a message. You're trying to control the tone. You're trying to make sure that people are understanding you. You're getting, you're learning how to get those feedback loops. A lot of technical people have that as a history, and then they don't count that as public speaking. But let me tell you, public speaking at like a conference or everything is so much easier than whenever you're in, I go into meetings and there are 4 or 5 VPs and me, right? And I guarantee you there is not a script You are in there and you are going to be, it's more like a technical support call than it is like a public speaking. And so having the ability to be extemporaneous and to have that sense of sufficiency that I am here, I'm the expert. If I don't know it, it's because an expert doesn't know it. It's not because I'm not an expert. And to kind of have that rooting in maybe something that's not, conference style speaking can actually give you a lot of the same tools that you would get if you started from conference speaking and then tried to go the other direction.
I mean, one of the biggest fear that I have is losing the audience, right? I mean, I don't know if they are interested in what I'm saying, even though I'm the expert or whatever I'm going to do on that. Same way, it's a small conference with VPs or CIOs in the meeting, or if you are doing a public speaking where there are 200 people, how do you figure it out that you lost the audience or you still with the audience, or what is the signal on that? Or how do you change your topic at that time?
So I have something that my leadership coach tells me that I really, really, really like, which is that all business value comes from conversations. And so if it's not a conversation, it's not bringing business value. And so a lot of times I think when you're losing the audience, it's that lack of a kind of a communication flow. Now, obviously, it's difficult for it to be a communication flow if it's like a pre-recorded video or something like that. And that's a different thing. But in that case, you're just going to have to kind of take a leap of faith and try to rely on the content. But if you are in anything where you can have eye contact with people, anything where you can invite questions, so you can take a breath, that moment of giving the audience their say and their feedback moment, even if it's just the pacing, I think makes a really big difference. And so if you are kind of giving that moment out to the audience and they aren't taking that moment from you, then you're not in a conversation with the audience. And what can you do? Do you need to actually start asking people? Do you have people that you've planted out there who know at these given points, this is a point where you could maybe use a question, and if no one has one, you've given them one to help you move it along. And I think that helps bridge you up to the point that you can do more like keynote style things, which are less in that style. I mean, but I think by the time you're at the keynote level, hopefully you've got the ability to do the preps and everything to kind of get it, validated ahead of time. But at the more practical, like business meeting type level, I think that extemporaneous feeling and that inviting the feedback of others and not letting yourself be caught up in that scarcity mindset around, I need to say so many words in the time allotted. It's like, say less words and invite the conversation, and it actually increases the value of the total content.
Yep, makes sense. Yep.
Excellent. Our good buddy Dean Tiller says, "Did I hear Andreas use a quote from Talladega Nights? Best thing to hear in the background." That was a nice addition, Andreas. Very, very nice stuff.
Shake and bake. Shake and bake.
Way to catch that, Dan. Nice to have you out there in the field, my friend.
I also think, we're talking about public speaking, but really what we're talking about is communication. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be public speaking. There are people who are unable to speak. There are people that I follow on social media who are blind and deaf or deafblind, and they're still having conversations and they're still participating, and they're still people that I view as leaders and people who have a very strong brand. So it doesn't have to be, there's kind of almost an ableist bent around it being about public speaking. And I think it's really just about communication.
And I think that's the brand that people very easily quantify, because it's easy to go, oh, I see someone at an event. I see this added to their resume that they did this, they did this. I think that one of the things to keep in mind is when you make that brand can be dependability, right? We all know brilliant, intelligent people who are wonderful bloggers, who produce amazing code, who, have wonderful help tutorials, things of that nature. They might not have videos on YouTube. They might not have presentations that they're doing in front of user groups, but they're coming out with this content. And there have been people in the community like that for forever. And so I think there's different ways that you can have that brand. I've heard this often when it refers to acting and show business and things of that nature, but I've always heard showing up on time and being prepared is the number one thing. So often in this job, right? Showing up, being prepared, being knowledgeable, being ready to go. There's a little bit of luck that always needs to occur. You need some type of chance, something to break your way But if you show up and you're ready to go and you've done the work, I mean, that's 9/10 of what you need to have done in the first place.
Got you.
Definitely. Neeraj, what about you? I think we've heard some good points from Andres. We've heard some good ones from Brad. What have you got?
So, I mean, personally, when I joined Microsoft, that's when I really started thinking about branding, right? I mean, in my previous companies, I did not really think about branding in all of them. But I agree. I mean, what Andrea said, right? Slowly and slowly, I'm building that brand, and that's one of the reasons that we started this whole Tales from the Field, right? And that's where we came starting building that brand. Few things that I definitely want to tell, like figure it out why. Why did you need it? I mean, that's where the why question came up last year was like why what do I need to do, and that's where public speaking was one of them, right? I was always scared. I've never done it. I mean, this might be my first going live on it, so that was figure out why, help me out doing that. One thing is be authentic on all the communication. That's what I always think, right? I mean, be thorough on what you're saying it. I mean, that's where you're not losing the audience in there. Send a consistent message. I mean, you need to make sure, be a thought leader. I mean, that's something that you definitely want to be there. Learn and grow, be proactive on it. You have help, right? I mean, as Vicky said, as Brad said, right? There are you can always have a mentor who can help you out building your brand. I mean, you don't have to be just one mentor. You can have multiple people looking at what you are doing it, and they can help you out build your brand. A couple of things that I think I've started realizing is that do not do on the personal branding, right? Keep it positive and don't go negative. And people do take you to the negative side of it, right? You will get negative comments on what you are saying it up. Be positive on what you are saying it. Culture fit is the best thing, right? You definitely want to be in the culture fit of it, and then have communication always open. I mean, the three things that I've tried to do it is have visibility internally and externally. Understand the technical. So anything that you're going into a meeting or you are going in there, you understand the technical part of it. And then business acumen. Why are you doing this up, right? I mean, what is the growth of you from that business perspective? You can be technical on one perspective, but the business, if you understand the business of it, you're definitely going to grow on it. So that's where your personal brand is. And I agree with Andreas, right? You started it as a mission, like you need to do this, but you are always going to divert it out. And it's not that you're going to be always going in the same path. As things grow, you are going to divert it out.
I love the kind of the starting with why, because it's almost like a superpower. If everybody's talking about off in the weeds of something technical and you come in and you bring the why, that kind of divergent thinking is really memorable and people really trust it. And for you to kind of root it in what are we really trying to accomplish here is so much more memorable and in many cases valuable than do you know the specific technical setting that somebody could have looked up, if you got it wrong. So.
No, and in from my perspective too, Vicky, I love that because I'm an ADD kid from way back, so if you lead with the why, that really and center around that, it's a lot harder to get lost when you're putting your thoughts together. You have that why, you stay with that why, and you don't kind of go everywhere.
Well, it's this notion from like, if you think about you're trying to drive a car, you're trying to go from Miami to New York, you need to know that you're going to New York. You don't necessarily need to know every literal turn of the wheel and how much pressure to put on the gas. You need to know enough to do those in the moment, but you need to know the direction that you're going. And if somebody focuses so much on like which direction you're turning the wheel and how much gas are you giving, etc., gas mileage, next thing you know, you're going the wrong direction. You're going toward the ocean. And so somebody who can turn you back toward this is the direction that you're supposed to be going winds up having much greater impact. And the smaller things, they don't mean a lot, once you zoom out.
Definitely. All right. Before we tabulate points, anybody else have anything else they want to add?
No, I think this is good. If you want to go ahead and tally up the points, Josh, I'll start to wrap it up. Do you have a points tally? Do you know who the winner is?
Well, I was going to have a little conversation on here with Vicky because Vicky needs to get her points in too. So for a little bit of conversation, I think I'm going to start Vicky with Andres, and I'm going to give him 2,000 points. I think he made some solid, good ads there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. And like the starting small, etc. I agree. I don't know the exact, how the points all work here. So I think I would also go with 2,000. So
Okay, so we'll go with 4,000. And just for you, Vicky, it's kind of like if you ever saw the Drew Carey show, whose line
yes,
is it anyway?
I figured yes.
Points don't
Points do
matter.
nothing.
So
Yes,
yeah,
points don't matter.
if you could give him 10,000 if you wanted to, and then we can always just adjust the bar from there.
Got it.
All right, so we're at 4,000 for Andres. What about Brad? What do we have for Brad?
So I think maybe negative some points for dropping out at the beginning of the time.
Ooh, negative
No,
500,
I'd
1,000?
say, I think that you've had some good points and actually have been, helping to rip off a lot of other people's ideas here. And so I'm gonna say 1,500 probably.
1,500 for Brad. All right, I'm gonna give him another 1,000 just out of pity because he dropped off. So we'll say Brad's at 2,500 there. Now, what do we got for?
Yeah.
I muted him.
Okay, there we go. And then I was gonna say, what do we have for?
So does Andreas get negative points for dropping off?
For
then?
dropping?
I mean, come on.
and making some noise.
Calculations, so I don't know.
It's only fair. I mean, look.
Oh, wait, maybe it was me then. I was like, oh wait, Brad froze. No, it was me. That's great. Yeah, exactly. So Neeraj, then what do we have for Neeraj? I'm thinking, starting with Y for me, I've got to come out of the gate with 2,500. Just off of that, what was your perspective?
Actually, I was going to say 3,000. So but start with why really goes to my heart. And some of the papers that I've written at work actually literally do start with saying we need to start with the word, with why. And that means a lot to me. And I think it actually goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning too, around authenticity. And so I think that's where I'm at, 3,000.
Yeah, and I was even just with the why, I'm like 2,500 out of the gate, and then when he went through the other stuff, I started tallying up points, but I figured just stop at the 2,500 because where we're at right now, Brad, Neeraj wins.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, look, first off, I could never win whenever Josh hosts this show. It's not going to happen. The fact that he didn't attempt to disqualify me, still, I marvel at it because
I encourage you to go back and watch other Tuesday episodes, Vicky. There was a whole thing where every time Brad would speak when I was the host, I would just immediately disqualify him from that week's competition until finally I was the bigger man. I waved the white flag and pulled disqualifications.
Oh, Josh, you're always the bigger man.
Whoa. Hey.
Well, I was going to say what? I mean, except when it comes to height, weight, and you got a big heart and a big.
No points. You're not getting points. You already win it.
I already lost.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So on that note, Brad, Neeraj is the winner for next week. Go ahead with that.
Excellent.
Friend.
Well, I guess the next thing I would like to say is we should probably move to our wrap up, and I would say let's make a call for the content. I'm not sure what that is. It sounds like somebody's honking. Don't forget, we've got our community roundtable on Thursday. If you are writing any blogs, you're making any videos, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to be able to feature you. That's not going to go on anytime soon. Tomorrow we've got our next MS Tech Bits. It's going to be me. I'm up with how to make your Azure SQL Managed instance general purpose faster. You want to find out how, you're going to have to go take a look. That's right, because as my good friend Andrea says, everybody wants to go fast, and if you're not first, well, yeah.
Wow. Are we really going for Talladega Nights episode here?
You're done.
Whole movie.
Neeraj is the next host. And so next up, we've also got SQL Bits. Tales from the Field will be at SQL Bits. And I'm going to be there. I've got a session with Patrick LeBlanc, and then I'm going to be assisting with some of the pre-cons. And then I'll also have another session where I am talking about soft skills, eat tech skills for breakfast. Remember, SQL Bits is hybrid. So if you cannot make it over to North Wales, come and join us. You can be online and attend. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Also, we will be at Sequel Saturday Jacksonville. Myself, Neeraj Jafari, our good buddy Daniel Taylor. We have a day of DBA Fundamentals 101. So there's still time to be able to get space in that pre-con. We hope you will come join us. And then we also have some FTA Lives coming up. Neeraj, what have we got coming up for FTA Live?
So today at 2 p.m. EST, right after the show, we are having Microsoft Purview Essentials, hosted by Amber, Eduardo, and myself. And then at 5 p.m. EST, we have Open AI discussion. So it's a FTA live session. You can ask questions right in the thing. So that's coming up today.
Excellent. Excellent. And Andreas, you've got an FTA Live that's going to be coming up very soon when we hit March.
Next Monday, 5:30 Eastern time. Be there.
Excellent.
Swear. Don't be.
And it is ML Ops, correct?
ML Ops.
There we go. Anything I'm forgetting?
No, I can't.
Bring
think
me
of
back
it.
a T-shirt from Northern Ireland. My size is medium. Okay.
I'm not going to Ireland. I'm going to Wales, but I can get
Same
you a
thing.
T-shirt, buddy. There we go. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and we will see you on Thursday. Take care and be good to one another. Bye bye.
Thank you, Vicky.
Bye.
Thank you, Vicky.